And so I'm going to pull up the website. Okay, so but you can see the URL at the top, right? Can everybody see that?
Anyone can't?
Okay, so what you'll see on your phone or your computer or whatever device you're using is this plus button here, and you can just put something in here that you think would qualify you for certain jobs that you're looking for. So for me, I put earlier my work as a career ambassador, and the oral and written communication skills that I gained as a result of this position would equip me for my future work. So just another example, I've also done a co-op, so I would put that here. Okay, so someone here has already written that they have foreign language fluency. That goes back to the study abroad kind of idea. Internships.
Technical language, that's really important.
Special Olympics coach, that's good. Research, I like that.
And some of those skills you might be wanting to demonstrate are your critical thinking, if you're involved in a program that really good at that, leadership, teamwork, communication, whether it's oral or written. So just any experience you have that kind of relates to those skills we will be talking about today.
Right. So those are just some examples that from you all, right? You all have diverse experiences that help prepare you for the workplace. And now we're going to talk about the specific skills that you build from those kinds of experiences.
And the reason we have Dora up there is because, like, her backpack has all the tools, and these are the tools you need to be career ready. Go to your job. Alright, so the first one we're going to talk about is critical thinking. So raise your hand if you've ever been in an interview and they've asked you to, what did you do when you faced a difficult situation? Or when is the time that you had to, yep, I've definitely been there too. Definitely, you had to deal with a difficult person or a situation and you had to think of a quick way. Yep, I see a lot of hands going up. It's a very standard question to ask during an interview because a lot of companies want to know, can you handle yourself in a stressful situation? Have you ever had to deal with something where you've had to be creative? So the formal definition for critical thinking is exercising sound reasoning and analytical thinking to solve a problem. As a STEM major, I get this a lot. It's something that is very harped on as a mathematics person. We definitely want to highlight our critical thinking skills, but it's also in every major. So if you gave me a canvas and a paintbrush, I really wouldn't know what to do with that, but someone who's an art major or design major could probably present something other than just like the snowfall. So critical thinking is very important to companies, as I said, and you really want to be thinking about different situations. So this is a great thing to have in the back of your pocket when you go into an interview, of knowing, already having a couple of scenarios where you've had to utilize this tool. Such as a career ambassador, this is a new launch we've started, so one of the great things we had the opportunity to do was kind of create the launch for career readiness ourselves. We were really able to brainstorm ideas, and that's an example that I've had of critical thinking, of being able to create a new launch and be creative with it and find activities to do with it. And then I worked in retail, which is an amazing experience. And I had to deal with difficult customers all the time. So one thing I always talk about when I go into interviews or I'm writing an essay about it is when I'm dealing with a difficult customer, I think of how I can benefit them. And that's kind of my critical thinking of how can I turn their problem into like a bonus for them. So I might give them 10% off something, I might wrap it for them so it looks nicer. It's not a big effort, but customers really appreciate that, taking the time for you to listen to their problem. And that's just an example of like part-time. But as I go through college, I'll get more and more experiences of how I utilize my critical thinking. And so the second one is leadership. So this is also kind of a typical question for interviews, but also just in day-to-day life. And I've learned this year, kind of my growth as a person is learning that leadership isn't just about taking charge. It's also about utilizing everyone's skills in your group. So my personality, I'm very hands-on. I very like to, get my ideas across, and I kind of would take over a project because I want to make sure it's done right. But that's not really a good leadership. A good leader. Leader is someone who's able to say to the person who's not talking at the table and being, hey, like, what do you think about this idea? And just being able to really bring everyone together and put everyone kind of on the same page of a project or anything like that. So kind of formal definition again is leverage the strength of others to achieve common goals. And this is extremely important for when we did that activity of if anybody went to the side that said work with other people. So you don't need to be the person who, at a table who just takes charge and is the main talker and does everything. But a good leader is just someone who recognizes everyone's own skills and really utilizes them to the best of their possibility. So that's just one way to use this skill.
The next one is information technology application. So it's basically the ability to select and use the appropriate technology for any given task you might be faced with at your job. So it's kind of the ability to work smarter and use computing to help you problem solve. I mean, there's so much great technology out there for you to take advantage of. And of course, there's some fields where you would use way more technology than others. For example, Will is an engineer, so he's going to have to know way more about all these different systems inside and out than I would as a communications major. But I still need to use information technology. For example, let's say I have a project where I have to do some kind of social media marketing or something like that, and I want to create content for a brand. Well, I have to know how to make an infographic, or I have to learn how to make a presentation or a video that will capture other people's attention. And I've actually done that at my job, where it's an arboretum, so it's typically just like nature-based and stuff like that. But I'm a social media intern, so I have to use different technology to educate people about all the things that they're doing. And that's really cool, but someone else who works at my job who's a horticulturalist, he's going to have to know way more about, different fertilizer and different things that they use in the garden. And so that's just how you see the differences in how people use information technology in their field. The next thing that's indoors, backpack as we would say, is professionalism and work ethic. And this is really important because it requires reflection and constructive criticism. So you have to be open to learning more about yourself and your habits to develop this skill or this competency. But it is incredibly important if you want to end up in the place that you want to be in your career. So if you want certain jobs, then you have to show an ability to manage your time well, responsibility, ethics. These are all things that are really important when you move along in your journey in your career. And it's not just things that you just kind of study in class. It's something that you actively apply. And it's something that people will, build your reputation around and judge you by. So it's really important to your friend.
Right. So oral and written communications is actually really relevant to me. Actually, recently I was on not on a career panel, but I was listening to an academic career panel. And one of the questions asked was, what do you find students lack when they leave school? And all of them agreed when one of the professors said communication. So it's really relevant because a lot of people are seeing that students are coming out of school and they don't know how to communicate effectively. And so an example of where I've had to communicate is at the end of my co-op rotations, I have to give a talk on the work that I've done over the course of my tenure at Seal Dart Corporation, which is where I worked. And the whole research and development department would come and listen to me, right? And so I had to really think about how to keep it relevant, right? I had been working with really, really detailed technical work the whole time, but I was going to be presenting to people who weren't necessarily really, really focused on the project, And there were also some business folks there, so I needed to keep the presentation relevant, maybe water down the technical side of it a little bit, and kind of focus on the application of the work I was doing. So that's just an example of communicating effectively, communicating in a way that delivers a message. And so this is, these are more specific. So this is the more specific information, and yeah, actually that's all I have to say with it. And so teamwork and collaboration, again, is something that comes up every day. We were talking about earlier during our initial icebreaker about working by yourself or working with others. No matter what you do, you're always going to have to talk to somebody. You're going to have to work with other people. And so learning how to build collaborative relationships and people representing diverse backgrounds, building that collaboration allows you to work effectively with people. And being able to negotiate and manage conflicts is really important as well. And so, for example, I am doing a senior design project right now. And let me tell you, it's tough because there's no set objective. I mean, we have to do we have to design a certain process, but there's no there's little to no direction on how we're supposed to do it or at what rate we're supposed to do it. So learning how to manage the team and allocate resources effectively and complete certain parts of the project linearly and on time is really important, and that takes a good deal of teamwork and collaboration. And finally, career management, which is, I feel like, almost like the black sheep or the one that doesn't quite belong with the rest, but it's really important because career management kind of takes all the skills previous and kind of applies them to career settings. So career management is kind of like having an idea of where you're going in terms of career goals, and also knowing where you are and how you can grow. And so, for example, I recently just applied to grad school, and I'll be headed out to doing that in the fall. But it took me a couple of months to pull together all my information about my past experiences in college, what I've learned, reflecting on all the work I had done. And so being able to take advantage of your experiences and leverage them in a way that kind of propels you through your career is kind of what this is all about.
And just to add on to that, so one of the things about career management is working on building your career, and coming to launches like this, so go y'all, is a great way to do it. And also as you go through, before I talked about me working in retail, but as I go through college, I'll slowly gain experiences, and I want to keep up with those. Not just when I'm going in my interview, or I'm kind of now just, or when I start looking at jobs. I want to start adding those to my resume now and keeping that updated, so when it is time for me to go for the big interview, go to career fairs, and really talk to companies, I'm prepared. And I know what I want, and I know what I'm going to say. And another great thing is that activity we just did kind of already lets you know what you want to be working towards. So maybe looking into companies that wear business casual instead of professional, or maybe going into a nonprofit instead of a corporate setting. Knowing stuff like that really helps you narrow down your research, and being career management and being able to manage that and knowing what you want to do, knowing what you like and what you don't.
All right, so now that you have an idea of all these career competencies, we're going to go back to Padlet, and let's see if I can split the screen here. What I would like for you all to do is to just think about what your best competency is to yourself, right? So what do you think you're the best at? What would you rank your #1 competency? And then just throw that in here.
I just want to say I'm great at all of them, so let's brag.
What do you think you'd be your best, Maggie?
Can everyone see the link up top? I will answer your question. Should we get that? My best would probably be, I would say, leadership leadership, I've learned a lot about it this year, but I also was a huge sports person in high school, so I had to lead my teams, volleyball and soccer. No, okay. But yeah, that's what I did, so I really gained a lot of leadership through that perspective, and also at my job, I was a shift leader, pretty cool, and so yeah, I gained a lot of experience through that.
Scroll down. Aha, there we go.
Okay.
So we have leadership and work ethic. Good.
Critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That's my strength too.
Do you want to try it? I feel like that's a lot, and then I'll just like cluster it right there.
Information technology, guys.
Yeah. Edit it. Hmm?
Said you have to edit it and then do it.
No, because someone else posted it. Well, that's unfortunate. But at least we have, a couple of people who have an idea of, what they're the best at. And what's a really good exercise is ranking these for yourself from 1 to 7. And seeing, where you're really good. What are your strengths? What can you, even further improve on and make you competitive in the workplace? And then towards the bottom, taking a look at what your weaknesses are and thinking about how can I strengthen those? And what kinds of experiences can I gain to build those skills?
Yeah, and you definitely want to start thinking about that. So maybe on your resume or in an interview, you can really highlight those things about yourself. For me, as a mathematician, math people aren't very famous for their communication skills, so that's one thing I really wanted to highlight about myself because it's something I think I'm pretty good at. So I looked for things I could do now that I could put on my resume that really communicated that to companies that, hey, like I have good communication skills. So career ambassador is something that I kind of fell into by talking with people and saying, and just relating to them how I wanted to express that skill, because I will get critical thinking through math and through training like that, but I wanted to highlight a skill that I thought maybe would help me stand out from people, and now I have that on my resume, and I can talk about it in interviews.
Another thing I would add is it's important to not just rank the things that you think you're good at to what you're not good at, but also think about your industry and what your actual next job role will need you to focus on. So for career ambassador, something that's really important for us is to be able to communicate. Other things are to be able to use critical thinking and to use information technology like Google Slides or Padlet and find new things. But in future roles, who knows what we might need to focus on. So that's really important.
And there's a lot of great things up here, even one we didn't talk about, such as work ethic, also something great, another skill to definitely utilize.
Yeah. So once you start focusing on good. Sorry. So once you start thinking about these core competencies, it's also important to think about other ones that might be important for you on a personal level, but also a professional level. So we're living in an incredibly globalizing world. So globalization is happening, and we're learning to work with other people and collaborate with people all around the world because we have such great technology. So it's really important to understand diversity and understand other people and their perspectives when you're in the workplace. I'm a communications PR major, and so we talk about crises all the time for different companies. And there are cultural differences between different people by their country, and so you want to be able to work with people in other companies or even within your own company. It might be from another place in the world. The other thing that I think is really important is creativity. So to be able to go and not only just fulfill your job role and all the responsibilities that are inherent to it, but finding a way to do it differently and to stand out. That's really important when you're starting to build your brand. When we talk about this process of building a great and successful career as far as the journey. The other thing is ethics and social responsibility. Corporations are thinking more and more about this. You see CPR, they're, you know, donating